All right, so you want to go through how to properly position the patient cart. And you could do this either beforehand or afterwards. But so what are some of the things you would point out here?
Center column aligned.
Targeted.
Yep,
The
so
target.
you want the center column to be in line with the camera arm and with the camera port, right? The targeting additive, perfect. Anything else about the camera arm?
Sweet spot.
The sweet spot?
You also want it on one side so that it's balanced.
So what on one side? The joint.
You want the
Opposite
setup
of the
joint on
third arm.
Yeah, the
The
second
second joint.
You guys familiar with what the numbers of the joints are?
Yes.
I
So
don't,
you go,
obviously.
if you go from the center column to this first joint out here, that's 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we say the second joint.
Okay.
That's what this is, right? The second joint of the camera arm is, so we want that on the opposite side of the third arm. All right, so
We want to make sure that the positioning is like the second joint, that elbow on the arm 1 is at basically at a 90-degree angle.
Numbers facing us.
Numbers
that's right.
facing
My numbers
us.
want to be facing you. Perfect.
This angle, 45.
You want it to be kind of
45.
like that 90
Yep.
degree angle.
And as far as height, we were told also to try to align the height of the cannulas, so you make sure that they're relatively the same height before driving the patient cart in.
Yeah, you mean this part here?
Yeah.
The face of it, yeah. And actually, at this point, let's not dock it out at all yet. You want to actually have everything
High.
Higher.
pretty high. You want to clear the patient. Don't forget their legs are going to be in lithotomy, right? So you want to clear the patient. You just want to have everything set up. So we have our third arm, like have it on, of course, this side, right? So we put our third arm over there on that side. And then, so once you go through sort of the basics, then we would have someone go and, whoever the circulator is, to go and actually push the cart up. So then you would have, and that's important because you want them to be able to do this on their first case, and to be able to direct each other and to be able to do that. So, Michelle, why don't you go ahead and move the cart up? I mean, it's obviously doesn't need that much right now, but
Somebody guide me, please.
we'll have, when it's the guide, okay.
Sure, sure.
And so what's important you want to reinforce here is that you need 2 people to always move the cart, and you want to be sure that you're giving room landmarks and not, because your
Right.
left and right is different from his left and right. So this is where you would just
I'm
reinforce
Chinese,
that.
so left is right for me and opposite.
So we're gonna use a surgeon cart.
Yep.
We'll use the vision cart as directions. Right, so bring it straight on in. Maybe move a little towards the vision cart. Just like there. There you go. Okay, stop.
Should be
Back
right,
up, okay.
yeah, you want it essentially right over the trocar, so that's fine.
Okay.
That's good.
Fine?
Yep, that's good.
Nice job.
The other thing, one thing I forgot to mention I looked at is you also want to make sure the patient table and their positioning is all done at this point, because one important thing that always happens that people forget is once the system is docked, your
touch it.
customers can't move the table again. And oftentimes for a new surgeon, they forget that. And they'll spend all this time docking, and then they'll be like, all right, let's move the table, and you have to undock and do that all over again. So reinforce that here. All right, so now that we have the cart
Barbara,
up.
it talks about driving, you talked about the timeout. Usually the
Yes.
timeout occurs
That's important.
long before they're making any sort of incision, right?
Yeah.
And that would be before they pull the patient cart in.
So that's actually, we're going to talk a lot more about the timeout, I think, when we get to dry run, but yeah, you want to make sure that you're reinforcing that everyone's sort of on the same page and,
What does that mean, dry run? What do you mean?
oh, before their first case.
Oh,
Before their first case,
yeah.
you do a dry run, and that's when
Yeah.
you have everyone practice, okay, let's do a timeout, so
Yeah.
nurse so-and-so, let's,
Right.
call a timeout, and what would you say there? So, you could mention that here. Does it actually say?
It's 2 points.
Before you bring it in.
Discuss timeout, patient positioning, and room setup before driving the patient cart.
Right.
Okay.
Well, she basically did that. She just didn't call it a timeout, right?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
but
We did that because we set our parameters.
It's different. The timeout happens before they make an incision.
Normally,
No, it doesn't.
yeah.
I mean,
Normally
it's timeout. This is patient Betty Sue. She's here for a hysterectomy. She has 1 amp of this.
and she
Everybody
wants to be home
agrees.
tomorrow.
She wants to be home tomorrow. Any allergies? No.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I consider a timeout.
Yeah, there's,
Makes sense.
I have to look at the dry run checklist, but I think there is another timeout you want to do when you're actually moving the system, because the other piece of it is when you're moving this big system, and depending on the size of your OR, you want to make sure it's not bumping into anything, that everyone.
That's how I did it.
That's
Yeah.
our timeout.
I
not
said,
like the
let's do a
theoretical
timeout,
OR
all
timeout.
eyes on
Yeah,
the system.
so
and
you're
then-
thinking of like a typical surgical timeout,
This is-
like normal OR
Yeah.
timeouts, which is
So
good, you
normal
always
yeah.
want to do that. But there's, the extra part that people aren't comfortable with a robot is this huge machine in a small OR, thinking about the lights, right, and all the ancillary equipment, all the
Okay.
people, other
Yeah.
people are running around doing stuff. You just want everyone to be like, all right,
It's the robot
let's,
timeout.
yeah,
Yep.
kind of, the robot timeout. And like I said, we'll get into more details when we do the dry run. But here, just mention, as we're moving up the cart, you always want to do it with a couple people, make sure everyone's aware of what's happening, and mention all the other potential obstacles. Because now it's draped, right? So you don't want to compromise the draping at this point. All right, so now that we have the cart out, we want to make sure, okay, well, it's in drive, so it's in, the shift switches are set to D. All right, so we want to have 2 people dock. So what I would do here is I would first teach docking, and then I would have the staff or whoever else come up and do it afterwards. So first off, I'm just going to move this out of the way to get access to the camera arm. But you always want to, and I don't have this draped, but were you guys all taught this way where you kind of put your hand in this L shape? And the purpose is that, as you can see with the drape here, the cannula mount molding, it can also get a little bit, after all the movement, after you drape, it can come out a little bit. So you want to make sure it's placed properly. And with your L, you're pushing back the molding of the drape, so there's nothing getting in the way. And with the back part of your hand, you're hitting that port clutch button. And what you don't want to hear is this, all right? You want them to be able to press and hold the port clutch button until it's completely in sync with the cannula. So I'm going to pretend like, let's say we have a drape here, so I'm going to just push this down. You can do that with 2 hands. Make sure, by the way, that your quick foot cannula mount is open. And I'll tell you, it's so much easier to do this when it's not draped. When it's draped, it's a whole different thing. So when you're doing this with your customers, that's why this step is after patient cart draping, because we want your arms all to be draped. You'll see that it's very different. And also when you're teaching your surgeon, same thing. You want them to have it draped. All right, so essentially, you shouldn't have to pitch your arm at all. What you should be able to do is just lift up your cannula, almost like a syringe, and push it in, and it should feel pretty flush. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just pinch the front part, and then now that I feel that I have a good give, I'm just going to pinch the back part, and it closes. All right, so I dock my camera arm. I'm going to do the same thing with my instrument arm. It is a little different with the drape. So I'm just going to push this down. I gave it that little give, and then the back wings close easily. All right? So after, I'd have someone else probably come up and do arms 2 and 3 in my in-service, or I might even just undo it and have other people do it. This, I would say, and actually for timing-wise, you mentioned timing, docking is about 30 minutes. Docking and patient cart is 30 minutes. Everything else is 20. Because docking does need more time. And I would say it's one of the most important things you want your surgeons to practice doing over and over.